while. Ben should be joining us in a moment. Ben.
Ezzy,
Hello, sir.
how are you doing?
Praise the Lord. Tell me something. Do you see? One second. Where is the Sfaria? Gotcha. Okay, one moment. Sorry. Yeah. Do you see? Do I need to make it bigger?
I see it, but maybe let me see. I can move
Or
us
make
to
it
the.
smaller? Sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. You see?
Yes, I do.
Amazing. So, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good, pretty good. And I don't know when was the last time we spoke, but probably before the holidays. So I
Yeah.
hope everything was good. It was nice.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke before our brothers and sisters were released, right? The live ones.
It's
So
true.
that's obviously
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And before Trump's crazy speech, and the world changes every minute. So
Mm-hmm.
crazy times. But you had overall, it was good. It was enjoyable.
Yeah.
Different from
No, it
last
was.
year. More meaningful.
Yeah, it was. It was. It's definitely more. Felt, felt more in it. Um, it is a very intense period of
Period.
time, both spiritually and logistically. so,
Right.
so it's something to get used to.
Are you a fan of Simchat Torah? There's some people that it's too much for them.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed. I wasn't in the Simchat Torah this time because last year was pretty insane, especially the Chabad. They definitely do it do it well.
Right.
So I took a break from that, but I do enjoy it for sure.
Just to, if anyone's listening, Simchat Torah is our celebration of uh, finishing the cycle of reading
Hmm.
the the Chameshet Chumshei Torah, the 5 books. And hey, RJ, it's good to have you with us. Oh, I was just completely remembering that I forgot to do something for you. Sorry. Um, yeah, so Simchat Torah is we celebrate that, and people are dancing, and they take out the Torah scrolls, and people hug them and dance around them, and everyone in the synagogue gets an opportunity to make a blessing uh, and read from the Torah if you would like to as well, and that includes like the little kids. So it's like a very very special time, and it's a very very long prayer service, almost as long as what usually people have for the Day of Atonement for Yom Kippur, but felt very differently. Right there, you're fasting, you're in synagogue all day. Here, you're in synagogue all day, but there's dancing, there's jumping up and down, there's kids getting candies. Many people drink, even though it's always an issue because the dancing period is happening in the middle of the prayer service, and then later on you still have to read from the scrolls, and you can't be inebriated when you do that. So people need to always be careful about that from a
There's nighttime celebrations too.
right. But
So
there's also people forget that there's reading also at night.
hmm right.
People always forget that they're wasted by the time someone has to tell them, okay, now there's this other part of the service that we need to do. But we digress a little. But it was a good period. I'm very, very, very glad to hear. Donnie's actually in Israel right now, so I'm gonna maybe meet up with him. Maybe he'll come over for Shabbat.
Cool.
I did not see what Jacob tweeted, nor do I have Twitter, so I don't know. But you're welcome to join us and tell us about it, Jacob, if you'd like. Well, I guess before we jump right back into it, we want to, in any way, review what we spoke about last time, or you want to move forward?
We can review it shortly if we.
I guess just like I would just say maybe just the last lines over here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we said this everlasting
Yeah,
love,
Baba
Ahavat
Olam.
Olam. We did that, of course. We did the Shema. Sorry, why did this jump back? Shema Israel. And why it keeps on jumping for me over here? What's going on over here? Sorry. Okay. Do you see that?
Yeah, I see it. I can see if I can.
Do you want to maybe try to add it?
Yeah, let me see.
Sorry.
I
Mugatu.
can't-
While
I
Ben
can't
is
say,
yeah.
but I so want you to see this, Chezi.
So
It's
see it.
so beautiful. You would have never guessed Satmar. This is official Satmar Twitter account. Okay. Let me make this bigger. How do I make this bigger? So you see what they wrote?
Makira Surim.
Matir Asurim. This is.
I mean, I
this
don't
is
see them as
Satmar.
I don't see them as that callous. Obviously, Jewish brothers and sisters have been redeemed. Thank
That callous? It's not a matter of being callous. They tweeted this out.
you.
With
Baruch
Shema,
Hashem.
with Shema
Hopefully, this is one stage of them coming back home. I'm very glad. Maybe they're starting to hear God knock on the door. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Chezi,
I
I
appreciate
love you.
it.
Be well.
You're leaving us?
I have to go.
Okay. We'll miss you.
Okay.
So you adding it?
I am adding it. How did I get here? Okay, that's good. I don't even remember how I used to do this.
On the bottom, there's a screen with a plus. Share screen. Then a prayer.
Oh no. And then a prayer. Here we go.
Okay, we did this part.
מהיר לארץ ולדרים אליו ברחמים תדבק.
Correct. We did.
Also, I realized something that
Yeah.
I realized is there's a difference between the way that I guess
Sephardi and Ashkenazi. Yeah.
say תתברך, תתברך, תתברך.
Right. We're doing Sfard.
Sfard, but this will be so this will be תתברך, תתברך. Ra. תתברך. Okay, we do that. Ahavat Olam, and then we said the Shema.
Then we got into the Shema, unifying God's name. We said we had to say both of those to get to the Shema, and we're going to start there on Shema. We spoke about in the Shema specifically. Well, towards the end, we were talking about. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but we spoke about how. I think we also spoke about the tefillin over there, but we went through obviously the whole. With all your might and all your soul. We spoke about Rabbi Akiva, sacrificing himself and doing that, and how we always have to be thinking about the Torah as well, constantly, and this divine awareness that we want to be in all the time when we wake up and we go to sleep. We spoke about tying the tefillin on your hands, right? That this is like a real physical action. We toyed around with the idea, if you recall, of like the sequence, the progression that our sages talk about, that the Gemara gives about levavcha, right? Your heart, which we said would be like participatory knowing, and then we said yadcha, right? Your arm would be the action, the procedural knowing, and then Einecha, your eyes, right? That's so between your eyes would be perception, or so perspectival knowing. And there's your mashkof, there's your doorstep, so to speak. So like it's your environment, right? Which would be like propositional knowing, right? So this is it moves from inner awareness to the outward action, and ultimately there's a broader social impact to these things as well, which we would hope. Of course, we mentioned this idea of totfot beinenecha, right? This idea of it's the lens through which we are looking at the whole world, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Indians have like the third eye, right, the little dot on their hand. So like there's the word itself, totfot. I like the idea of the Egyptian connection, how it connects to the pharaoh had a serpent on his head, right? We spoke about that as well. And the scrolls were buried together with the mummy, right? So we are taking the Torah is in a certain sense responding culturally to is transforming the womb in which it came from, right? Egypt, like the motherland. It's taking the pharaoh's crown and turning it to the phylacteries of the head. It's taking the scrolls that like are around the mummy and turning it to like the living mitzvot, right? Instead of being wrapped in death, we're actually like moving forward in life. And there's the whole idea of the Egyptian bondage in general that we're in, that we are now, we're free. We have this moral responsibility, right? So, that's obviously a focus on the Exodus, which we'll get to in the third segment of the Shema, right? Because we just did the first segment of the Shema prayer, right? We're going to do the second one today, and then there's the third. Maybe we'll get to the third as well. We also played around with the idea of, I think we spoke about this with the mystical interpretation also, that we have the pharaoh's crown. If he was the pharaoh of both the upper and the lower kingdoms, it was a serpent and an eagle. And we said that in the mystical traditions, there's Bina, which is understanding, that's like the upper worlds, and Malchut, kingship, is like the lower worlds. And this is a reflection of the two traditions that we have when we put on phylacteries. Some go according to Rashi, with a sequence of the parchments that are inside the phylacteries, which focuses on like the revealed order of things. And then there's the Rabbeinu Tam version, which his different sequence really emphasizes the hidden dimension of these things ultimately. And now I definitely remember, because I remember Jason mentioned this in a comment, but how Israel in this sense leaving Egypt is the klipa, is the fruit, and inside you have this inner seed that comes out from it, right? This is like we're seeing like seedlings of this. Okay, let's read and move on.
Second one. Yeah.
Okay, you have the English translation as well.
Yeah, actually, let me. We usually put it.
Can you mention the importance of wrapping it around, and the letters that are formed and the connection there? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So when you are what RJ is referring to over here, when you're putting on the tefillin, right? First off, there's a knot in the back, and this is according to the Midrash what Moses saw. There's a deep meaning into that, but maybe we'll go too deep. But I think we'll touch on tefillin a little later on, maybe in the next, I don't know, a little later on. But I would want to open that up more about tefillin in that sense. But the wrapping on the hand specifically has on it, you wrap, and it says on it the letter Shin, Daled, Yud, which means Shaddai, right? El Shaddai. This is one of the names of God, which has its own meanings, but we have that wrapped on our hand, right? Which itself is this declaration that we have. And on the tefillin of the head, there is actually a letter. There is a Shin, right? The letter Shin, that has, it looks like 3. We have it over here. We can actually see Vaya'im Shema, and it will be. So here you can see a Shin right over here. So the Shin has 3. However, on the other side of the phylacteries, Ben, if you ever notice this, you have a 4-pronged Shin.
You mean just the fact that it's divided?
If you open up a picture of tefillin, you'll notice that there is. I don't know if you could share that, but there's on one side there's on the black box there's a 3 shin, and on the other side there is a 4 shin, and had tefillin. No G.
Yeah. That probably got me.
Okay. So there you can see over there where it says "Be careful." So you can see there it's a 4. I'm saying, look at the first picture where your cursor's on, or sorry, that's my cursor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The second on the second row, that one exactly. There you could see a 4-prong shin.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So right. Okay.
Exactly. And on the other side, it's 3. Now the reason it's 4 is because we are told that when the tablets are being prepared, right, or the when God is writing the tablets, the first tablets, right, the letters were suspended, right. They're sort of, you could see it from both sides, and the letters were burnt sort of into charut, into the stone. Now, if you would take a 3, right, a shin, if you're engraving it, and like I have a flat piece of here, so I'm going to push the 3 prongs through, right, and when I push them through, I'm left with 4 prongs. So it's supposed to resemble a floating letter and what it would look like if you're looking at it from both sides. So it's a very interesting idea in that. I hope, RJ, that was sufficient. Okay. And obviously you're welcome to join. והיה אם שמוע תשמעו אל מצוותיי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיכם ולעבדו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם. Right? This is sounding familiar to what we said earlier. ונתתם את ארצכם. This is a new addition. ואיתו יורה ומלקוש ואספת דגנך ותירושך ויצריך. ונתתי עשב בשדך לבהמתך ואכלת ושבעת. ישמרו לכם פן יפתה לבבכם וסרתם ועבדתם אלוהים אחרים והשתחוויתם להם. וחרף אדוני בכם ועצר את השמיים. ולא יהיה מטר ואדמה לא תיתן את יבולה, ואהבתם מהרה מעל הארץ הטובה, אשר אדוני נותן לכם. ושמתם את דברי אלה על לבבכם ועל נפשכם, וקשרתם אותם לאות על ידיכם, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניכם. ולמדתם את בניכם לדבר בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשופקך ובקומך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען, this is now an interesting addition over here, because what we just said, we said this in the previous one, למען ירבו ימיכם וימי בניכם על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם כימי השמיים על הארץ. Go ahead, Ben.
And it will be that if you vigilantly obey my commandments, which I command you this day, to love Adonai your God and serve him with your entire hearts and with your entire souls, that I will give rain for your land in its proper time, the early autumn rain and the late spring rain, and you will harvest your grain and your wine and your oil. And I will put grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be satisfied. Beware lest your hearts be swayed, and you turn astray, and you worship alien gods and bow to them. And Adonai's fury will blaze among you, and he will close off the heavens, and there will be no rain, and the earth will not yield its produce, and you will perish swiftly from the good land which Adonai gave you. Place these words of mine upon your hearts and upon your souls, and bind them for a sign upon your hands, and they shall be for totafot between your eyes. And you shall teach them to your sons to speak them when you sit in your house, and when you travel on the road, and when you lay down and when you rise, and you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and upon your gateways, in order that your days be prolonged, and the days of your children upon the land which Adonai swore to your fathers to give them, for as long as the heavens are above the earth.
Very, very nice. Okay, so I'm sure if you realized off the bat that there's some of it is repetitive with regards to what we read in the previous, the first portion of the Shema, right? So we're seeing that over there, and there's a difference over here, right? So off the bat, in the first paragraph of the Shema, we have with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, right? With b'chol mo'odcha, right? So this is the ideal of for Hashem, for God, that even when I'm at this point of giving up my wealth as well, right? And in the second paragraph, right, it's with all your heart and with all your soul. But here it's sort of there's a joint love of God with this also expectation of reward, though, right? There's rain, there's crops, there's things I need to prosper, and in this paragraph, the Torah is really recognizing the weakness we have as humans, that we have this mixed. We love God, obviously, because we love God and we're trying to be true, but there's also this mix where we have this hope ultimately for blessing, right? We're told, we learned in Pirkei Avot, don't lo almanat lekabel pras, right? We're participating in the mitzvahs and we're observing the mitzvahs not to get a reward. Nevertheless, we're not ready for this absolute surrender of with all your might, right? There's this conversation where God is also speaking to us at that level, where he realizes as humans, we also have this expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, so to break down this verse even more, we have this there's this famous discussion about this in the Talmud, right, in the Gemara, in tractate Brachot, where it brings these two these two opposing views. We have Rabbi Yishmael, what talks about gathering your grain, right? Because we see over here your oil, your grain, your so where he's talking about gathering the grain, this is teaching us to live according to derech eretz, right? What we call like the way of the land, right? We're not supposed to expect miracles. We're supposed to participate in actualizing this in the world, right? That even Torah scholars have to work ultimately, and you have to be participating in this. And we can't take literally that the other world is going to take care of us. Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right, the famous Rashbi, he has a different idea with this. He says if someone is, in English, it would be if someone is plowing and if someone is sowing and if someone is harvesting, when will he have time actually to participate in Torah, right? And his opinion is that, no, instead, Israel actually needs to be fulfilling what God wants, as in just keeping the mitzvot, and the rest of the world ultimately will end up sustaining them. And this is a verse from Yeshayahu that I'm trying to think in English what it would be, but it's Zarim are coming to take your son. So different Gentiles will the foreigners are gonna plow your gardens and take care of your vineyards. So this is his opinion. And obviously we see there's this tension between Torah study and worldly work. And obviously, Ben, you and I are very aware of this with regards to, Israel, the Haredim and the army, and how that balance is happening, right? Military service for the ultra-Orthodox in Israel. A lot of this also weighs on part of this as well. Like how much work, how much are they also, well, less army, more with the workforce in Israel, right? Where how much of that balance is done. And there are, reconciling views of this opinion, which would be the Rav Chaim from Volozhin, right? The Netziv. He sees it as only a certain elite of people need to be devoted their whole life only to study Torah, right? Which and in that sense, like Rashbi is correct. However, most people need to be going according to Rabbi Yishmael, right? Which is doing Torah and work together. And that's why really the Shema is in plural, which is talking to the nation, right? But this phrase is talking about like an individual, right? So it's talking about more like it's hinting to an individual that feels they could actually take this on and handle this. And there's a famous also opinion of the Khatam Sofer. The Khatam Sofer believes that this is really between Eretz Yisrael, right, the land of Israel, and in the diaspora, right, out of the land. And in Israel, ultimately, one is dealing with the land is not a curse; it's a blessing. It's part of actualizing these stuff. So plowing and dealing with the trees within itself in Israel is already part of the blessing. And if you're doing it, however, when you are outside the land, there it's a different opinion. There, you don't want to be participating with it. But when you come back to the land, and obviously we are very fortunate that today we've returned to the land, that work really regains its it's Torah dignity, it's holy dignity, right? That we could actually be doing this. And obviously I hope that all my brothers and sisters in Israel could also agree with that opinion as well. Kalanimus, thank you. Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. What are you adding to us over here? I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding you. Any thoughts, questions? Because I want to maybe develop this a little more, but I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have anything in particular. I mean, I don't remember noticing it, or maybe at some point, that it does switch, right? When it talks about the commandments at the top, it's still plural. Shema tishmeu, if you hear, plural. Serve in plural, and all your hearts and all your souls. It's also plural, like I give you the land, the rain in its proper time.
Mm.
But then it switches when it talks about natati esev, like I gave you.
Right, exactly. So the gathering
grain
of the grain and doing that, right? We're saying that is hitting to an individual that is saying that he could handle like the calling of constant Torah study, and that's going to be for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting, and it's always, and in my mind I also have this question about, it's almost like you have, in some sense, when we talk about mitzvot, it's almost like you have a direct action that you can take that is a mitzvah, and then you have auxiliary actions, that are not as directly a mitzvah, but they sustain it. So, but in some ways, it's not like you can just do mitzvot, right? You can just do these very direct, pure actions like studying Torah, and then that's it. It's like the sustaining of it is, at least for most people, is not only it's not a compromise, it's essential. And maybe it's essential in terms of sustaining the society that can also perform this at scale, right? Which is another thing to think about. It's like, as an individual, you might want to optimize for, I want to be as pure as possible in my actions, so I'm optimizing for just doing mitzvot, the purest thing that I can do, whether it's studying Torah or anything else that's particularly that. But I also have my perspective as a citizen or a family member, where I need to think where I can't really optimize just for that, because it's about sustainability.
It's also for living. The chai b'hem, I'm saying it's supposed to be experienced at all levels, right? Like I'm saying, that's why the mitzvah is all encompassing, right? Like I'm saying, this goes back to the previous parsha we were talking about, which is, it's really a constant awareness and mindfulness mode that you're in, that in all roads, in all aspects, the Torah is there. The Torah is allowing you to see these things through its own prism, and you're supposed to act accordingly, right? And I spoke about this in the weekly portion review about how part of the issue with happened with the sin of eating from the tree, right? I go into there with an explanation that the nachash really is another aspect of man's psychology, but that's eating. It's the wrong order of things with regards to like taking this knowledge before you really are eating from, like really experiencing life properly, and then there's a proper order to these things. And if you are going around looking at things from an exterior point of view and not from the Torah point of view, you could very easily go into this land of mundane and land of idolatry. But if you're doing things through the proper orientation, then even drinking wine, right? Or like I speak over there about eating from the according to the Midrash, that eating from the fruit was a grapevine, right? That like You could eat it just for wine, or you could use it to sanctify the Sabbath, right? Like, how are you using this thing?
I have a. That's not a question. It's almost like I guess a question. It might be for later, but and you're saying something about, and I'm remembering also hearing your Pasha video, right? You need to. They were supposed to eat from the tree of life first, or like that's part of it. Like, okay, first you want to have the want to be able to sustain the knowledge. Is that where you were saying there? So that's the
We
right
we we
sequence.
want to be able to sustain the knowledge properly, right? But we have to do it in the there's like sort of it's premature revelation ultimately, right?
Right, right, right.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
doing over there.
yeah. It was just interesting
Instead of
because
allowing life, right, kedusha, sanctity, right, that needs to precede the intellect, right? If he chose knowledge first, right, and that's why it became destructive ultimately, right? So that the
right,
idea
yeah.
was that, I'm sorry.
I understand that. No, I totally understand that. So then my question is, I don't know if it connects, but it's like in the Amida, your first request is for that, which seems to me to suggest the opposite sequence, where first you want to have a knowledge so you can understand how to
What do you mean the
sustain it.
first thing is dot though? If you could.
Well, in the Amida, in the prayer, right? I mean, you have the introductory, you have the blessings. So maybe
Right.
that's something that let's see. You have the blessings, but then your first, um, you have the blessings. I don't know how to call them in the proper term. But you have the blessings. Again, Avraham, right?
Yeah. Wait, just like to
Machinatim,
confirm, in Tefillah you're talking about in the Amidah?
Amida, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right, and then your first you have chonen adat, right? Giving knowledge, and that is supposed to be like the first. Isn't that like, well, I guess
No,
it's
but
not
you like
necessarily the
like
first, but
you just said there was a whole prerequisite, which was all the Shema, all the things I'm putting myself into this, all the things we're reading right now, where I'm putting myself all into this mode first before I'm going to even ask, before I'm even going to talk, before I'm going to so I'm saying, once I get to that mode, then the blessing is give me knowledge because I'm in the proper order right now, right? Now I want the knowledge, right? The idea is, right, that if Adam Rishon, if Adam would have acted properly, right? If he, the idea is that it also happened on Shabbat, right? He's doing it, he's eating from it too early, and if we properly balance when we did these things, right? Like the wisdom of the Garden of Eden wasn't forbidden forever, right? It just needs to be approached through the gateway of holiness. Now, during prayer, we've already put ourselves through this whole gateway with Yotzer Or, right? The Arenic, the Agentic, then the Shema, the unification. And once I'm already at the prayer, right? Once I'm entering into the actual, like we spoke about, like the prophetic dry run of talking to God, then obviously I've already done all the things. And we spoke about earlier how we have to do it through Koved Rosh, right? We have to be in the right mindset even to be doing this. So
right.
we're definitely not starting with dot, I would say.
Yes, not yeah. In the bigger picture, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's why I brought it up, because in my mind I was kind of trying to think about.
I see. By the way, Cal, you're saying it's Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, and you said I said Rav Chaim from Volozhin, and in that quote, maybe I misquoted. I don't know, but thank you. If I did, I'm sorry. Can we see your screen again? I'm seeing like half the screen. I want to see how they wrote Hishamru Lechem Penifte Levavchem. So scroll down. Beware lest your heart be swayed and you turn away and you worship alien gods and bow to them. Right. So if we notice after this first part of the blessings, right, now we're being warned, right, that obviously if anyone's following, this is part of. Someone just tried to join. I just heard something.
No, that's my computer.
Oh, I got you. So we're being warned really over here, right? That the heavens, the skies will close, so to speak, right? Yet right after that, right, we see this this part about put it upon your hearts and upon your souls and upon like right after that, right? So like you're threatened, you're gonna be kicked out, and then again it goes into put these things on your hearts and your souls. So there's an idea over here where we see this jump happening over here, which is again this little addition over here is sort of talking about exile again. That you need to you need to make sure you give yourself how it says it in Jeremiah. I don't know what it is in English. It's simulach tamrurim, like give up yourself like markers or warn. What would you say?
Stoplights.
Or stoplights, right? To warn yourself, right? Like that this idea of keeping the mitzvahs inside the land and outside the land, right? That like you were saying earlier, that it's fully involved in our life and we're participating in it, that there's this national connection we have with the land of Israel, that even when you're not in the land, you still need to be participating sort of in this ritual constantly. The ideal place to do it is obviously in the land, but you obviously need to constantly doing this because practicing this sort of the dry version of this in exile allows you to fully participate when you come back to the land. But you're not gonna remember this. But if you look at the sequence, it goes like this: that you need to take care, right? Lest if you're going to be deceived, right? You got to watch out, right? So, and you will go into exile, like I'm saying, read it out that way. Like we get this warning, meaning if you don't watch out, you're going to end up following these alien gods. You're going to get kicked out of your land, right? And then when you're in exile, place these words upon your heart, because when you're there, you're going to have to keep the mitzvot nonetheless, or you're going to have to still participate. And like Jeremiah says, it's also going to allow you to maintain this connection to the land. Why? So when you come back to the land, ultimately, right, your children, you're going to have to be able to be there for a long process on the land itself. And then because you're destined to return to the land, right? So you're even being hinted over here what the proper, the proper order of things. You're going to not listen. You're going to get kicked out. You're going to have 2,000 plus years of exile. And throughout those 2,000 years, you're going to constantly be participating in this, really. It's funny when Rabbi Cook in the in the 1900s or 19th century, when he's born, 80% of Jews are religious and 20% are secular. And when he dies, right?
Yeah.
20% are religious, 80% are secular, right? But most of our period in exile, right? It's the Jews are maintaining this sort of connection. And we could see it allowed us to think I'd come to this land, right? And that's why this second paragraph, right, is really teaching us this foundation of observing the personal mitzvot, right? As tefillin and mezuzah, right? Even in exile, we got to do this because it's preparing us to return, to Zion. And again, like I said earlier, our generation comes back. We merited to come back to the land of Zion, right? I say Zion because Israel's, politically, people are nervous about it today. So people shouldn't confuse that Israel is Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, Zion, obviously. And the Chafetz Chaim, I believe, said, Cal will correct me if I'm wrong, but that, the value of putting on tefillin in Israel is like 20 times or 30 times more than putting it on in Poland, right? There's a sense of all these things. If the participation in prayer is a dry run for prophecy, participation in mitzvot in exile is a dry run for doing mitzvot in the land of Israel, where they're ultimately supposed to be expressed, right? So that's not like, I'm not trying to give you a hard time for being in exile right now, but you're the way obviously it's supposed to be happening is here on the ground. So that's why when I said earlier when we were reading this, there's a repetitiveness to this for the first paragraph, because really this is letting us know, again, we're not going to listen, the repercussions of having of that, and then coming back to the land and participating in these things again. And that's why these mitzvot of, like we see over here, of the tefillin and the mezuzah is allowing yourself to build this framework that will constantly remind you of what you need to be doing until you come back to the land. I think we still have time to start maybe some of the tzitzit.
Yeah.
So I see over here. Is there a connection to the first of the 10 commandments? I think so. What do you mean? Like as far as like the commandments themselves, like the first, or the all the commandments, or the first few commandments?
Or the first commandment. Like
You could
I'm
clarify.
God, you're God. Like which one is a command? Because it's also debate.
Okay, tzitzit. We'll also expand on this. We'll expand on tefillin. We can expand on tzitzit. But ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם ועשו להם ציצית. על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת. והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל המצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים. להיות לכם לאלוהים אני, אדוני אלוהיכם. It really ends with emet, and then we read the next portion over here. See, you must be careful to connect the last words of Shema, emet. Is true. God's name is true, but yeah, that's that. Not then we'll be moving on to the next portion. But let's read the translation over here.
And Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and tell them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and they will place with the fringes of each corner a thread of blue, and it will be to you for fringes. And you will look upon it, and you will remember all the commandments of Adonai, and you will perform them, and you will not turn aside after your hearts and after your eyes, which cause you to go astray, in order that you will remember and perform all my commandments, and you will be holy unto your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Truth. Mit.
I'll just mention that when we say this prayer during the day, we when you get to this part, you hold your 4 fringes of your tzitzit and you of your fringes, and every time we mention the word tzitzit, we kiss the tzitzit as well. Some people kiss, put it around their eyes as well. Some just kiss it. But it's tzitzit. So you know what? Let's. What time is it right now? Okay, let's maybe just do first like a little background on. Let's unpack sort of what's happening with tzitzit over here, because tzitzit is not. It's not really because of the commandment of b'shavtecha v'kumecha, right? That like when we're doing it when I go to sleep and when I rise up. I'm not saying this to fulfill that part of the mitzvah, which we said part of the saying of the or citing the Shema is, but it's also that we're doing this to remember that we left Egypt, right? All the days of our life, we have to remember that we left Egypt. And this paragraph was brought in because this allows me to do a daily read of, remembering or recalling the story of Egypt. Now, even that needs to be unpacked a little in the Mishnah, in also the tractate of Brachot, as it makes sense as we're talking about this. We talk about the Exodus both in the day and the night. It needs to be mentioned. And there's this discussion. It's also, you might have recalled this from the Agadah. There's Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah. He says that I am like a man, kiben shivim shana haiti. I don't know if you remember the story, right? There's this miraculous guy. He's 17 years old. He becomes he gets to a prominent position. He's nervous that people are going to think he's young. And at night, the next morning, he wakes up and his face, he has all his hair turned white, so people will respect him. So I am like a man of 70, I kiben shivim shana haiti. And he never merited to get to say the story of the Exodus of Egypt at night. So here you're already seeing a tension that at that time, not everyone agreed about saying that portion at night, right? They were saying the first portion that we read, but this portion they weren't saying yet at that time. Now he teaches us the days of your life, right? The kol yamei chayecha. This is referring to the days. And all the days, there's Yamei Chayecha v'Kol Yamei Chayecha, right? All the days of your life is really talking about this also includes the night. Now, in the Gemara, of course, some of the sages interpret this differently, right? There's a classic dispute, and they're saying that one is talking about this world and one is talking in the days of Messiah. And this is what's behind this debate is really that Ben Zoma is brought in, and his view really that during the Messianic era, the story of Egypt is not going to be mentioned anymore, the Exodus, because we'll be in such a great place of the Messianic time. It's surpassing this redemption of Exodus, and like it's a whole new level, right? We're returning to the land, and there's no shiabud malchuyot, the end of foreign dominion on top of us. Right now, the way the sages see this though is that the Exodus still needs to be remembered, but the future redemption is going to be even greater than this, and we need to realize that the message for obviously today in our life is that we have to learn to see the sanctity of our own time, how the miracles that we're experiencing today, I'm sure Jacob will disagree with this, but the miracles we're seeing today are folding in front of us, and we should stop to recognize this. But I digress from tzitzit, and I do want to go back to tzitzit with regards to it's how it connects also to this national connection, right? And really, every nation has its own identifying garment in a certain sense, and tzitzit is our national. Not only are we connecting to our national homeland, but there's also like a distinction over here from other people, and it's really this badge, I would even say that we're wearing in the portion of Lech Lecha that we're speaking about Abraham going to the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, right? So there's this verse where Abraham is telling the king of Sodom that he's not going to even take a thread for like a sandal strap, and showing that he's separating himself from the values of Sodom, right? That Abraham's very different in this, and the Midrash connects that because he said that he wasn't going to take even the string or the strap, that this is why we were gifted tzitzit, right? So we see that we're already being distinct, and creating this difference between us and the nations is starting with this physical expression of our identity, right? So there's like this, I'm sure we'll get into Tchelet as well as we move on, but it's very interesting to look at it that way. And I would say that even technically, tzitzit really only applies halachically on a four-cornered garment, right? But which was once common, I would say, like obviously in ancient cultures, and we still see this obviously in Saudi Arabia and things like that. But I would say even today, we see that, beyond the letter of the law, Jews are always expressing this love of tzitzit. Jews are always wearing tzitzit in the morning. All my kids wear tzitzit in school, even though they don't have to be wearing tzitzit. And Jacob loves quoting this all the time, how, from Zechariah, that in one day, 10 people are going to hold on to my fringes and things like that. So, this is... this, I would say, is representing the spiritual magnetism that tzitzit has. It's like this divine symbol. I realize that I said that you don't have to wear it. There are some that say that you do have to wear tzitzit even on like a shirt. There's like upper corners, like I have on my collar over here, and bottom corners. But the Beit Yosef disagrees with this. Says there isn't an obligation. If we're already talking about this, I'll mention also, again, from a halachic point of view, there is a debate with regards to the fabric. Is it need to be wool and linen, right? Which is sort of like what I wear, which would be more, let's say, in reminiscence of ancient times, or this is according to the Ramah, you could be wearing, synthetic stuff, modern stuff, and it's all valid as well. And it's also, it shows why it's important, because a lot of people they don't have to be wearing tzitzit. Yet,
right, because if you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, then...
Yet when they play basketball, they all rely on this opinion, and they wear like a mesh tzitzit. Now you could be like, just take it off. You're going to sweat in it. Like, no, I want to still wear it, even though I'm participating in this hot or sweaty activity. I know I don't need to wear it, so I'm going to lean on, let's say, this other opinion, if I want to, or let's say the quote unquote more lenient opinion, which will still let me participate in this mitzvah. I'll also just mention that, we even see it in today that like Israel has a huge boom in many people wearing tzitzit, even if it's, I mean, predominantly secular people in Israel or traditional people in Israel are now wearing many garments with tzitzit. All the soldiers requested tzitzit when they went into the army as well. And just to take this into consideration for a moment, Israel sent 400,000. Again, there was a massive request for tzitzit, right? For these garments, for these fringes in the army, right? Tons of soldiers, secular soldiers were all asking for this. There were roughly 400,000 reservist soldiers altogether. I mean, soldiers altogether, including reservists, that joined the war since the beginning of the war. That is like 20 million Americans joining the war if they had a war. And that would be like 5 million more Americans that fought in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Show me one country around the world today that you think there would be that percentage of the population that's willing to go out in a moment's notice, leave everything behind and go fight a war, right? Like we're showing a completely live and vibrant nation that believes in itself, that believes in its ideals. And all those warriors all wanted to wear the tzitzit as well. And think of the message that means as far as like the meaning that these people have in the life and the things that our nation has. And like, it's a reminder to all the West. It's a gift. It's a reminder of what bravery looks like, of what meaning looks like, of what having belief in your country looks like as well. So to me, again, this is like a huge indication of sort of like prophetic times. But I understand people need to be careful with these ideas as well. I would even mention that. Sorry, you have any comments or things like that? I see like I'm on a roll over here.
No, I'll let you continue.
Again, this is Ben's channel, and sorry, not Ben's channel. This is Jacob's channel, and Jacob is not a Zionist. You could ask him what that means, but I'm just clarifying that as well. This is my own opinion. I would even say though that again, this section that we're talking about over here at tzitzit, right, is, if you notice, it actually begins with these expressions of speech and hearing. Right, that he's saying, speak to the children of Israel and tell them. Right, so we see over here, and only afterwards do we see this visible thing that happens of tzitzit. Right, so I would say that this is, and we spoke about this in Ethics of Our Fathers about the Hebrew logic of hearing before seeing. Right, so there's the Aristotelian view, right, of sight, of the aesthetic, if I'm looking at things, of these ideas and these images, right? So I see, and because of that, I understand. And the Rabbi Nazir, the Rabbi Cook's student, had to talk about a lot about this, how the nations of the world are dominated by the visual logic, and Israel has this, he calls it Shema'it, right? There's like the how do you say hearing auditory, the auditory logic that I have, right? So Shema Israel, hear, or Israel, right, is I'm hearing, right, is to hear is really to believe, it's to internalize. And by hearing, I'm really, there's an ava, a humility to it. There's there's like a patience, right? And a vision is more like there's a control. I saw it, I understand it, I know exactly sort of what's going on. And really for Jews, or in Jewish thought at least, in this world, hearing, right, means seeing, right? But in the world to come, like it says in Isaiah, they shall see eye to eye, right? Ultimately, I'll see, like, fully understand and see it properly. Or in the mystical traditions, right, the Zohar, when you want to play with the holiness, it always starts with ta chaze. Right, in Aramaic means come see. Right, when you're in these holy worlds, then you could talk about seeing. But when you're in this world, you need to be talking about hearing, because we're seeing there's a lot of lies, there's a lot of deception out there. I would even say how it's important to think about that even with deepfakes today. How important is it actually to rely on what we're hearing and what we're understanding, and not necessarily what we're even going to be seeing, because so much of that is fake, either because people are putting up like a fake veneer, or people are literally manipulating the reality around us when they're making like these visuals. And again, this is not to take away from the visual, right? The temple obviously was Noyo Shel Olam, right? This was like the beauty of the world, and clearly it's about sight, it's about the aesthetic, right? But it's all happening inside the bounds of the Torah, right? We spoke about this a lot of times, like even idolatry over there, right? So
Right, for a purpose.
exactly, it's all for a purpose, right? The beautiful chest plate of God doesn't care that the about all the gold elements in the tabernacle and the temple, but there's a sense where if it's being sanctified and humans appreciate it, obviously there's something to that. You agreeing? I see like a face of maybe like you're doubtful. Maybe you want to throw.
Yeah, I mean, some of this, is new insights, so I'm kind of taking it in.
Tzitzit is fascinating, obviously, and there's like our flag, the flag of Israel is in certain sense connected to what a talit looks like, right? To the garment itself that you're wearing. And it's also supposed to be a symbolic of the Red Sea splitting and Israel walking through it as well. But it also is very much connected to
right.
I mean, going back to the hearing, we sing this in Lecha Dodi on the Shabbos, right? Sof Maaseh v'Machshava Tchila. I drill this into my kids all the time, right? In English, that would be last in action or last in the deeds that you do, first in thought, right? So what appears last externally began with something internal, right? Like if I first thought about something, so my Maimonides, right, the Rambam, he says that tzitzit is like the hair, right? Like the fringes are like the hair, right? It's like these strings that are coming out. Right. So these are these delicate strands, right, that are growing from this hidden thought, right? The brain underneath, right? So the deepest ideas that I have are like reaching like action when they come out of my hair. So like in that way, you have like a circle, right? I have the hair on my head, right, which is the intellect, and then I have the tzitzit of my garment, which is the action coming out into the real world, right? So I have like, I'm taking power from above and actualizing in the world itself. And
the fruit.
Correct. That's the fruit, or it's very much the reminder that that's what I need to actualize. And if the Shema starts with hearing and is ending in this sense, like with seeing, right? So this is so again, I'm moving from faith to, like you said, to these fruits, to this embodied vision of what I'm doing ultimately. And that's why the tzitzit is and the Torah says, Lo taturu achrei einechem, right? Don't go after your eyes. Asher atem zonim acharehem. So what's your translation in English over here?
After you, which your eyes caused you to go astray.
Go astray. Exactly. So zonim also means like literally to to liznot is what is going
prostitute
on?
yourself.
Right, but not to a prostitution, but being unfaithful, basically. Right, I'm leaving. I'm entering in this like unholy union in that sense. Right.
Yeah.
So really, and this again is stressing how our mission of Israel is to unite our inner intentionality with the outer action. Right, and ultimately to reveal the divine unity, right, within the physical world. Why it's so difficult for us is, we on one hand we've had this 2,000-year exile Torah, and like I said, we've been practicing so we can get to this point of practicing it in our land, right? So that's a big part of the tension right now. We're back in our land, and how do we do it? How do we do it as a country? How do we have this Torah? How does it manifest? Like, how do we update it? All these issues that we have, even like, it causes a lot of tensions.
How do you enforce
it? Secondly, I would say even more importantly is that, we lost the land, which we got back now again, and we're getting back. The other thing is we lost revelation, right? Like the second the Torah stays stagnant, at that moment, we lose revelation as well. Like we lost Sinai at that point. We had Sinai, and after 2,000 plus years ago, at the end when we lose this revelation, and it's, relates to our whole discussion about prayer, things go silent. And then we have a Torah. And as long as the Torah keeps on innovating itself, we still have the echo of Sinai, right? So we still have these elements also of the revelatory word of God. Once the Torah gets stagnant, though, even though we're doing it to preserve it, right? People are very nervous, a slippery slope, what's going to be, which I totally respect and understand. We don't have to fully unpack that argument. But once it gets stagnant, you're cutting off revelation, right? It's not a growing revelation. It's not moving. So that's it's very difficult. So part of coming back to the land is preparing ourselves also to be in that revelatory mindset.
Right.
So,
which is why in a weird way, the idea of, and we can pick it up next week, the idea of the tchelet, the blue fringe, is in some weird way a political statement. Like not only an halachic statement that somebody says, I agree with the halachic position that it's important enough and it's close enough, but it's also almost like political, because you're saying, we're actively searching for something to do better, even though we lost it in a sense in our tradition, but we're reconnecting.
Right. So we'll get into that. I believe, if I recall correctly, Rabbi Shirky said in the past, someone asked him why he doesn't wear tchelet, because he says, I believe that the tchelet that they located, right, the blue color, is indeed from we found the proper source. So why doesn't that wear it? He's like, when the rabbinate of Israel decides that that we should wear it, then I'll put it on. There has to be this agreement of it as well. The new chief rabbi of Israel, right? Whereas recently, who just voted, actually wears the blue fringe and speaks about it as well. So even there, you're right. There's a political element to what we're saying, which is we are manifesting this. We are doing this. We're going on. And I believe that is also what God wants us to do. It's, we got to step up. It's not, and this is a discussion Jacob and I have all the time, right? The temple is not going to fall down from the sky. It's a joint effort between God and us. If we need to prepare the vessel, we need to show that we want it. There's these signs that are going around Israel right now. It looks like your classic street sign in Israel. You could imagine, let's say, the colors you see on the highway of that green or that brown sign. And it says in it, there's a picture of the temple, and it says Lehar Beit Hashem, to the Mount of God, right? The mountain of God. And it just means, it's just basically saying this way to Jerusalem. But seeing it is I would say consciously, it's preparing ourselves, being do we dare to imagine one day what it would look like to see street signs that look like that? And there's a sense which is that's what it would look like. It would look like a modern day street sign that's showing you this way to the temple. And if we want to build the temple, the first step would be, can you even imagine what that would look like? Do you even know what a street sign would look like? You don't even talk about connecting the internet in the temple. I'm talking about, do you know what a street line would look like? So that to me is, these are seedlings of a conscious change of what is it, who we are, and what is it that we want, right? And I really think that's the only reason we even have a reason to be in this land. If we don't want those things, then we're colonizers and we should leave. But if we want that thing because we believe that through that thing, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, and that our Palestinian brothers and sisters, or specifically our Arab brothers and sisters, will be able to share with us, and even including living in the land, right? The foreigner that's living in the land. The Torah talks about this and stresses this all the time. There's nothing more Israel than Hebron and Judah and Samaria, or the West Bank, what they call that's where Abraham is. That's where the stories are all happening. And another thing that's constantly, and the land of Israel, obviously constantly mentioned in the Bible and in the Quran itself, obviously, or not obviously, but in the Quran itself. But what's also constantly stressed in the 5 books is the foreigner that's going to live inside your land, and how you have to love him and treat him. So the tension, it's a feature, not a bug, are us needing to deal with the Arabs in our land. The fact that they're our cousins, and the fact that they're the foreigner, all of this has to happen, which we need to see ourselves as Israel, and they need to see themselves as Ishmael. and we need to, there's a lot of reconciliation that needs to happen so we could truly understand who we are. But ultimately, it's all for life and all for blessing. On that note, Ben, I bid you adieu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Next week, we'll keep up. Well, we'll continue.
It's good.
Catch you later, dude.
All right.
I'm on for a few more minutes. If someone wants to jump on, they're welcome to. Someone wants to talk Israel and a little politics, I could do that as well. If you have a question, though, Eric, you're welcome to type it in, and if I could assist with any sort of answer, I'll be glad to oblige. You'll have to excuse me. It's fairly late, and I had a very long day. How do you see the ability to separate the Arab peoples of Ishmael from the false religion of Islam in that coexistence? Oh, very tough question. But part of it, I think you could see in Saudi Arabia, and that's why we're living in such prophetic times. Saudi Arabia is if we could have peace with them, that's like the first, I don't know, the first domino, but one of the first dominoes to that massive change, because that's that whole Sunni world, and that world is looking into reforming, and they need help doing it. There's a sense of like the Western mentality, even though I have a lot of challenges towards the Western mentality, but there's a sense where they need to be invited into that. And also theologically, Christians and Jews need to assist them with, and this existed in the Muslim world, the ijtihad, right? The reforming of their sacred text through a sacred process, right? So if Christianity has its own tools and Judaism has its own tools to reform these texts or interpret these texts, again, through proper tools, traditional tools, we need to assist them to take the divine sparks that are in Islam and allow them to manifest it how it properly needs to be oriented. And that's going also back to earlier interpretations. There's been splits of Mecca and Medina and how they interpret certain things. So it's a lot of work. However, there is I don't know how I want to say how it's growing, but there are people that are interested in it. There is a relationship that's starting to develop between different people in Israel and in the Muslim world, that is, or the Arab world, that potentially could allow for this to happen. I'm putting aside, Palestinians. That's a different kind of worms, but the Arab world itself, I listen, I'm an optimist, but there is a sense that there could be a change. It does require a change in Islam. It doesn't mean Islam needs to be forgotten, though. I think Abraham wants to see his sons get along, and it's a request. It's a request from Jews and Christians, from Muslims, to properly orient themselves again, not to abandon their religion. How can they reform past something so foundational as Muhammad being Allah's messenger and the best for men? Right. So great question. So there could be an understanding again that in Islam, Jews have their own Sharia of 613, and Christians have their own Sharia of, let's say, the Noahide laws with Greek toppings and flavor above. And there are the basic tenets that we agree upon. So there could be a sense where others are accepted. Now, then we have to ask, how do we interpret Muhammad as being like the last prophet? It could be seen as the last prophet as in a universal version. That is sort of like another version of expressing a connection to God, right? Which has it has its own flavor. Again, it needs to be reformed, but it's not necessarily denying Judaism or Christianity. Rather, it's offering another, maybe like a more universal version of worshiping God. There's a good article or paper by what's his name? Abramson. What's his name? If you send me on Discord a reminder about this, I could send you a link. But he gives like an interesting breakdown about this. Yeah, listen, it's difficult, but I think this is, at the very least, this needs to be the language that we're offering, right? It's not that we can't. It's not that we can't fight. And that's why Trump's speech in Israel was so crazy. This is, for all intents and purposes, the king of the free world. And he, first of all, starts with gratitude to God, right? That's how he starts his speech, which is crazy. And again, the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. That's how he spoke about this. And I understand that there's someone writing the speech and there's political motivations also behind that. Nevertheless, that is still the language that is being used. He mentions in the speech that it's the people are hungry for God and it's the time for God, which is incredible. But he speaks about how this is a place where we could connect with all these Arab worlds. So, it's very hard for us to know how these things end up happening in real life. But in 2 years ago, who would have imagined that we'd be in this position today? Where peace with Arab worlds is not necessarily some fantasy. It's actually potentially in reach. I just haven't seen anything sourced to Muhammad that isn't lifted or misrepresented from Judeo-Christian. That is true. That again, that doesn't mean. And there's two narratives to this. It could be not true, but I don't have to deny it. At the very least, I don't have to deny the possibility that the Arab world had a prophet that had his own words to teach them, and that was relevant for them. It's not relevant for Jews. It is relevant for them. And I would say the Quran itself speaks about this in different surahs or in the Hadith, which talks about different verses, how, Muhammad says that if you have doubts with regards to what I'm telling you, go ask the people that got the book before you, and how they're supposed to participate in their own thing. And as long as they're doing that, then leave them be. So again, it's which verses are we focusing on, what their interpretations of those verses are. I understand that that's a minority of opinions, but those are the ones that we should be talking about. Those are the ones that we should be promulgating, that we're interested in dialogue with. Yeah, he was rebuffed, and there's a whole story over there as well. I want to, the prophets, there are different visions of the prophet. I'm not saying it has to happen this way, right? That Ishmael comes back into the tent. We see this in the scripture. There is this tension, obviously, between Ishmael and Isaac. And Ishmael is kicked out of the house, as you know. Whole crazy and beautiful story over there as well. But according to the Midrash, after Sarah dies, Abraham becomes extremely sad about this. And Isaac says, Dad, go back home. Go get Hagar back. Bring her back. And she brings her back with Ishmael. And Ishmael realizes then that it was never this hate. Isaac never hated him. There wasn't this tension, this rivalry that he had to be nervous about. And then when his father dies, Isaac and Ishmael go to their father's tent. But Isaac goes first, and then Ishmael goes in. And in a sense, it's a recognition by Ishmael about the order of things, or the hierarchy of things. And Ishmael, like the blessing that God gives him, is universal, is there to promulgate God's word, and he's been doing a fantastic job, right? There's billions of Muslims out there, and that's fantastic. It's the way, how it happened, how it's been interpreted, and also how it's been participated in. Like, there's a lot of ignorance, unfortunately, in the Muslim world, and not, I highly encourage I often talk about this, the workers on the work sites that I run, their prayer rugs, they should have something nice. Don't have a piece of cardboard, and don't pray in the middle of the construction site. Move to a side room. Take yourself seriously. You are the sons of Abraham. So what I'm offering is a path. I'm going back to the prophets. When there's different versions of the prophets, the Talmud talks about, you could see these as different routes, right? These could be like sort of like different timelines, right? Depends on our actions, right? Do we repent properly? Do we get to such a lowly level that we need to be redeemed? Do we fully manifest ourselves properly, and then we are deserving of being redeemed? But are we doing that together with our Christian brothers and sisters? Which is why I'm very vested in this community, right? Because I'm looking for my brothers in the field. Or do we need to do it in a different route, right? If you look at how Ezekiel talked about things, or Isaiah talks about things, is different. How we look at the foreigner, where he's allowed to come in or not, there's different versions. So what I'm saying, if we want to try to do it with everyone coming into the tent, then our language needs to be one which sees the divine sparks in Islam, and in what in its best, in its best day in the sun, give it its best day in court. So I'm willing to dialogue with someone who wants to dialogue in that language with me. If it's all war, then obviously there'll have to be a different route that needs to be taken. And then then that religion, which potentially had a holy origin, could be corrupted and could, disappear. Hopefully they could elevate where they are right now. I understand this sounds patronizing, but what I'm offering is, come join the party, but we got to do it with the same sort of rules, at the very least, until this relates to how I look at the Dome of the Rock, right? First of all, its original name is Beit El. It's known as a place to remember Beit El Mikdash, which in Arabic means, that's in Arabic. In Hebrew, that means Beit HaMikdash, or the temple. And it was known that they needed to clean the foundation stone and take care of it. Only later on does it turn into this mosque that has all this attention onto it. But I have no need to, quote unquote, people here the Jews want to blow it up or get rid of it. Right now, it's supposed to be a house of prayer. I just want everyone, whoever wants to pray there, Jews, Muslim, Christians, everyone is welcome to go up there and pray. And when the Messiah comes, or the Mahdi comes, who are we to argue with what Allah or God wants us to say? And that day comes, we'll accept whatever he says. But for right now, we can all pray there together. And we need to be able to come. I'm saying even with Christians, I'm not here to convince Christians. I'm here to say, at this point of our journey, at the end game, we need to start walking this hill up together. And these things will sort themselves out as we move together, as we see ourselves. We make space for ourselves. We talk to ourselves properly. And again, in a brave space, it doesn't have to be kumbaya, but it needs to be respectful, and seeing ourselves all as sons of God. Yeah, again, this is where we need to at least create a space where this conversation could happen. And before October 7th, it was a little easier. After October 7th, it becomes more difficult, but now even more so, we need to be talking about this. We need to be pushing this. We need to be pushing this. We need to be explaining that this is a possible route. I would love if Israel did it more explicitly. And again, I think that's why we have to be speaking in a more religious language. And that's why Trump speaking the way he spoke at the Knesset, he was laying out sort of this vision. Again, it was beautiful to hear someone dare to dream again, but a vision which he was articulating in a modern way, that the nations of the world will be blessed through you, and how this could, we could talk about a world-changing paradigm, and it's sort of an invitation for Israel to join, but it requires us as Israelis to realize who we are, right? Which we haven't done yet. And I would say this is part of our own, close to 80-year experiment right now in this. And that's why I'm okay with Jacob saying, I don't like Zionism. I agree with him that the secular state of Israel is only a vessel or a stepping stone to something greater. That doesn't mean it means it itself needs to manifest into something holy. It requires the tools and the exoskeleton of politics. Now, how that proper blend happens, that is a very big responsibility, and one that we're trying to figure out now. The CJC3 is responsible to maintain secular and openness because our creator can take consent. We don't know if we don't. This is not a rule. History sure seems to say that as. I know, but now I feel like we're at the end. We're at their end game right now. The Muslim world, even the Christian world, needs to deal with the state of Israel. Why did these people come back? Why did the Bible become alive again in 1948? What does this mean theologically for Ishmael? What does it mean for the Christians? Or I'll use the language like the archetype language of Edom. All the brothers need to come together. And I mean, you can't write this stuff up, right? And the brothers are having the conversation, right? The Arab world, America, Israel, all this attention on what's happening over here, right? All these actual genocides in the world and actual famines in the world, yet this gets all the focus. This gets the ire of the world. And I've said this often, there's a sense when the world is looking at Israel, even when the world looks at Jews, this might be provocative. We could either be Judas or we could be Jesus. There's nothing in between. Either we are the enemy and we are the killer and we are destruction, or we are the saviors. And we need to step it up. We need to become who we're supposed to be, a light unto the nations. That doesn't mean genetically better. That doesn't mean that we are better than other nations. We are the heart inside the body. We can't walk. We can't move without hands, which is Esau, right? We can't participate that way. But we see ourselves as the heart, or we see ourselves as the chimney cleaners, right? We're all in the house together. We have this beautiful house. But in order for our connection from below to above to the divine, right, we need to have a channel. We need to have a chimney for that to happen. And we have gifted to the world that mechanism, right, to connect to the divine. And hence we have our daughter religions, right? We have our sister religions, Christianity and Islam. However, in Judaism, when oriented properly, we are there to clean those chimneys. We have 2,500 years of being very, very dirty, cleaning this chimney to make sure that this divine connection could happen. But we obviously have to build this house together. That would be glorious. It would be glorious. Inshallah. That's right, Eric. Through the line of David. Again, so much to unpack in that idea. But yeah, I agree. Eric, I don't know if you are making a little plug to the 3 people or 4 people watching, but Eric, if you are enjoying this language, you might enjoy the weekly portion review videos I do on my channel. I think the tricky thing is, don't leave me on my the edge of my seat. What is it? It's tricky. Yeah, it's very tricky. There is a truth, and we all need to submit to him. But being human, we're going to find that exceedingly difficult. Yeah, but I know you're saying that, Eric, but think about it. Between Christians, Muslims, Jews, I mean, Jews is nothing, but Christians, Muslims, and out you go as far as even, let's say, some of the Eastern religions ultimately also recognize the oneness behind all things. Basically, every tongue has sworn and every knee has been bent. Not every, a large majority of the world has recognized the master of the universe, which is crazy. So, like, you know, how do we look at these things? I know this is like a Steven Pinker attitude, but like I could zoom in and look at horrible things. I could zoom out and be like, how far we've come. And, you know, it sounds, you know, Pollyannish, but on your money, in God we trust, right? And all the internal documents of in the United States, so much God is, you know, all over. So, you know, and even like we said, even Ishmael, like we think that's why it's so painful. And that's why I was speaking to one of my Muslim friends that how crazy it is that in the name of Allah, these crazy things are happening, right? Which is such a desecration. But even them, right? There's such an intense belief, right? The Zohar talks about how Christianity, with regards to the Kabbalistic spheres of the tree of life, Christianity is the right hand of God, which is chesed, grace, and Islam is the left hand of God, din, judgment, right? Like there's this intensity to it, and Judaism is tiferet, it's like this balance between them. But I think we're moving in the right direction. Which channel? My channel. I could send you a link. Yeah. This channel. There's like weekly videos on the portion that's been going on for like 2 years. So there's cycles of them, and then there's the live videos, which if you go to the live, you'll see there's like series of different things that we've done there. And I don't know for sure, but I think that's where the childlike pose of knowing God knows, and I probably can't do that. Yep, we're limited people. Yes, and that's why, again, I'll mention that, you know, I'm speaking, you know, I'm a messianist, and it's very hard for me. Again, there's verses I could look into and things that the sages have spoke about that I could quote that they would, you know, I could show a nice presentation of like why it's messianic times, it's redemption times. However, one should be very careful to say like, oh, look, it's verse X of Isaiah's happened tomorrow. And like, you know, this verse here means the attack on Iran. So no, I don't go that far. And we were warned many times not to calculate, you know, the time of redemption. But one doesn't want to be ungrateful, right? I mention this often, how King Hezekiah, the Talmud tells us, could have been the Messiah, but was not the Messiah. Like redemption could have ended at that moment, but he didn't he didn't realize and wasn't grateful. He didn't sing praise, Talmud says. He wasn't grateful to God for the miracle of being saved. And because of that, it didn't happen. So again, it's sad because Bibi, even though there was religious elements in when Trump came, the fact that Bibi and also the opposition leader didn't start with thanking God and Trump did, to me also is a reminder that we need to be told from the outside, wake up, Israel. Like Cyrus, in a certain sense, who himself is called a Messiah. I'm clarifying, Donald Trump is not the Messiah. But the idea of having this outside figure come first, recognize and being first grateful to God, that is the proper framing. And if all Christians, Jews, Muslims realize that we have to start with recognition of God, we have to start that we're in his world. Israel doesn't belong to the Jews. I belong to Israel, right? There he is, Sam. Sam, you're welcome to join. Donald Trump called Messiah. He wasn't called Messiah. I was connecting the dots between Cyrus and Donald Trump. And I mentioned that Cyrus is called Messiah, but no, Cyrus is obviously a Gentile, but he's called Messiah because of the actions that he was participating in. And because of that, he was a vessel for God in that sense. But that requires sort of recognition and a certain respect to the master of the universe. And hearing Donald Trump say that in his speech and starting his speech like that is crazy. His even playing with the name Abraham when he changed it to Avraham, how Jews pronounce it. Even that, I know there's a ridiculous level, level of interpreting that, but there's also a sort of a rectification over there, which is recognizing the deep-rooted source of that name, both to Christians and to Muslims and to Jews. And again, that's a sense where God is being discussed more seriously and being brought into this discussion, right? Like all these fights are happening. We're in God's world. And we all should take that more seriously, because if we start looking at the world that way, it will make these political battles, I think it could allow for clarification, and it could allow for a path forward potentially. It was a crazy speech. Again, like it was a very emotional day just because the hostages were being freed. But when I was watching it, we were in the kitchen, and the second Trump when he starts with thanking the God of the creator of all things, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When Donald Trump says that, I just started bawling, and my son asked me why. I'm like, I told him, look. I said, look how all recognize Hashem. And it's a crazy world to be in. When you look at what's happening on TikTok, and then you get to hear that language in our halls of politics, to me, that is the beginning of proper orientation. Hashem first, God first.
It's pretty crazy.
It's nuts, Sam.
It is nuts.
It's bonkers, and things are happening so fast that we don't have time to even take it in. Because like Donald Trump was almost assassinated twice, Charlie Kirk, all of these things. Again, one has to be very careful about this, but to me, they all are data points of something much, much greater happening.
One thing that's really funny about Trump, and this is true about US presidents in general, is sometimes I feel like Trump has more authority in Israel and Gaza than he does in Chicago. Right? Like, I don't know if you've been seeing on the news, right? You know, he's kind of having a tiff with the city of Chicago at the moment with ICE agents running around, and then the governor and the mayor trying to limit the ability of ICE people to round up illegal immigrants. And, you know, the governor of Illinois saying, I'm going to resist this tyrant, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. It seems like Trump can barely make a dent in the, you know, day-to-day operations of Chicago, but he can have near messianic transformative power on the other side of the world. And it's strange.
So, okay. So 1 second. I mentioned this earlier, but now that you mentioned that, it connects to me. So I think I think I might have an inkling of an idea why that's happening. And that's because I connect that to the meaning crisis. I mentioned earlier, I don't know if any of you heard this, you could stop me, but Israel, in the last 2 years, 400,000 reservist soldiers have been fighting in the war.
It's a lot for a small country.
That is like 20 million Americans fighting,
Yeah.
which is like 5 to 6 million more Americans in World War II.
Right. That means that everybody is 1 or 2 degrees removed at most from someone fighting.
Show me one country in the world right now that would send out that level of their population to go out and fight, or that are willing to go out
Ukraine.
and fight. By the way, sure. You know what? I give you that. Ukraine. By the way, I don't know if the numbers
not Russia. Those
right,
Russians, the Russians don't want to fight for Putin. They, you can round up the prisoners, you can round up the poor and the desperate and the drug addicts. The middle class and above Russians do not want to send.
Because what do you stand for?
Yeah.
Now, I would say that in its best, or make America great again, if I'm using a Kabbalistic term, we want to take the divine sparks from that statement, right? Removing the racist ideas over there, going back to truth, going back into God we trust, going to proper orientation and meaning. And that's why when Trump speaks in that language, in the Middle East, that matters.
Yeah.
In the Middle East, to Muslims and to Jews, he is speaking our language. There's an orientation. There's missing the mark. There's sinning and there's not sinning. In Chicago, or in the Western world, where if you look at the dictionary, the word literally now also means figuratively, then ICE, like that's the idea. ICE is there. We could quibble about, we don't have to quibble. Anything, if something's being done illegally, obviously should be called out, and all the good stuff about how we should be participating in removing illegal people. But there's this sense of like, should illegal people be removed? Yes, truth. There's an order to things. And that's why, that doesn't mean not having compassion. Right? That's how it's so inverse. They're illegal because there are illegal immigrants. There are legal immigrants because of Judean Christian values. We, of course, understand that there's pain and suffering in the world. And we are creating a platform and a country that will allow them to succeed and want to bring them in and all those good stuff. However, it's constantly be seen in this backwards world. And that's why when Trump is speaking, it's like scratching the board. You keep on trying to tether us back to this, and maybe that's the rise of the conversation of of Christian nationalism, where we're like, we want to go back to this emet, to this truth, and obviously Israel's dealing with this as well. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a huge surge of Jewish identity in Israel right now, and that could go very wrong. Like you hear members of Knesset saying, like, now I want that, like every institution, any building that has government funding needs to have this the mezuzah, the little thing that you put on the side of the doorpost.
I have one of those on my front door, not because I put it there, but because some previous owner of my house was Jewish, and I've intentionally not removed it because I kind of enjoyed being there.
Oh, you should totally have it. That's part of like the 4 Ps. We were talking about this earlier in the lesson. This is sending out to the environment really out there.
And also when I say that, lots of my best friends are Jewish and I grew up in a pretty Jewish neighborhood, like the fact that my house has one of those, I don't even remember the word on the door post.
Mezuzah.
Yeah.
Now, I would even go to your conversation, your recent conversation right now. And this is also my response to Claire that asked, why am I wasting my time talking to these heathens?
Well, I might ask, why are you wasting your time responding to Claire's YouTube comments? But please go ahead.
By the way, honestly, I believe that like once I've engaged and someone wrote back to me, it also helps your algorithm. There's more engagement happening over there.
Yeah, that's my feeling with Claire. Comment away, Claire. The algorithm loves it.
Exactly. So spread the love. But my answer to her was that it's happening on your conversation. So that's what's interesting to me. You are speaking to this professor who's been called a heretic and all the different kind of names, and you're a Unitarian that's speaking as well. This is the most incredible time, and me commenting on it, right, as well, and even Claire commenting on it. Where everyone's seeking, Claire, don't you see that we're all trying to connect to him, to understand him better? And once there's this kind of bifurcation, it almost allows for a unity again, because I'm looking at us like, again, at this point, there's this midrash when the Jews went through the Sea of Reeds, it's split into 12 different sections to the 12 tribes, and that each tribe had its own sort of little channel, and they didn't see each other's legs, but they saw sort of each other. They saw each other moving towards the same direction, though. So you're not exactly sure how people are getting there, but we know we're moving towards the same place. So I'm extrapolating that towards my relationship with my Muslim brothers and sisters and my Christian brothers and sisters, which is like at this point of the game, and this is why earlier I was saying the invitation really is now to Islam to sort of join at this like last route. Like, can't you see the world is changing around you? And Saudi Arabia, that's why I'm excited about it, because there's so much still levels of corruption and issues, but that is how the boat is starting to turn. And I want to give them a language or a place to land on, which is like, I'm not asking you to now bring in woke theory into your mosque. I want you to have another mosque. Go to church and go to mosque and pray. We want that. We just need to orient ourselves properly. So again, I think in America, it's scary what's happening, but it's great. I like that anti-Semitism is on a rise in a certain sense, because again, it's the period of clarification. I want to see who my enemies are. I want to see who my allies are. I'll tell you one other crazy thing. It's nuts. Jordan Peterson, Douglas Murray having a conversation. Towards the end of the conversation, Douglas Murray tells Jordan, outside the UN, it has the verse that says, we're not going to teach battle anymore and no one's going to fight anymore. I'm forgetting the exact, I know it in Hebrew, I'm forgetting exactly.
And the beat swords into plowshares
exactly.
and spears and pruning hooks.
Right. So Jordan's like nodding. And then Douglas Murray says, but you know what it says beforehand? I just noticed this right now. He opens up a Bible and says that before that, it says that from Zion, the Torah will come and the word of God from Jerusalem. And Jordan says, like, you're right. He's like, you know what that's called, Douglas? It's called a prerequisite. And Douglas says, like, before you could have peace, you have to have the first thing. Why are they saying that? Why are these two Christians? Like, why? Like, it's nuts for a Jew to see that being spoken about. And that's why Trump, seeing that and Trump speaking, I have this whole crazy theory. It's even why Bibi, the figure of Bibi, for like the last 30 years, he's sort of been keeping this boat. He's been sort of deflecting the outer world. He's changed the economy over here. He's been letting Israel sort of figure itself out. But like Trump coming to the Knesset is saying, guys, time is running out. You got to step up and you got to realize like what's in front of you. And you're not going to be able to do that as this like quasi-American, quasi like Poland, like be proud and identify as Israel, not as what Jacob hates as, let's say, the secular nation state of Israel, but as the people of Israel, which of course has political elements to that as well. But if you could do that, then I think you could go to this next stage of
Jewish nationalism. Really is.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what other word would be the right word for that.
But through that, but it goes back to the blessing of Abraham. It says the nations of the world, but in Hebrew it's mishpachot ha'adamah. It's the families of the earth. It's realizing it's being a nation state, but understanding having still that familial bond. And a Chinese person doesn't wake up in the morning and ask himself, like, do I have a right to exist? But Israelis still have, since Abraham decided to heed the call, we sort of have this subconscious question, should he have said yes? Why don't you just tell God, like, nah, ask someone else? We have to like justify every day Abraham's here I am. But we need to stop, stuttering about that. It's been long enough to say like, no, here I am. And because of that, that means irrigation to the region. It means oil. It means technology. It means like America, Israel, India working together. I'm taking this now to like the AI, to the technology world. If we want to take AI, CRISPR technology into using that to create the resurrection of the dead, possibly, it will only be that and not necromancy if we're oriented properly. Right now, it's like, China and other world, things are going to change rapidly. And if we don't realize how serious these things are in front of us and how we have to sort of rectify this world in that sense, it could go into chaos. It could go into a horrible direction. And I think we're being invited onto the world stage but that requires a lot more responsibility, and we can't be playing like nonsense games. And I think that's sort of part of the tension in Israel itself. But again, that's a long ramble and a lot of speculation.
Yeah. I feel like America is funny. I feel like in some ways our self-confidence is really almost as strong as ever. You know, America has a weird, funny, almost Israel-like self-confidence question. And, you know, we sort of, you know, we steal this land from the Native Americans. That slavery stuff was not so great. Blah, 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 blah. We're not even a people. We're not even an ethnic group. Are we an idea? Are we the Constitution? What exactly is America? But yet sometimes when America feels self-confident and knows what it is and wants to do things, it's, you know, it's just one of the most unstoppable forces there is. One thing that I think is weird is that I feel like still in America, Trump is not being given the standard legitimacy from, say, the press and the establishment and the general taste-making, sense-making, you know, power brokers, as, you know, even say George W. Bush was, or even like Mitt Romney was treated as a candidate, even though he was probably still somewhat mistreated, but he was still like a person who could be president, and if he were president, he'd be the legitimate president, and, you know, you could disagree with him, but he's the president. Whereas Trump has always been treated with this air of dislegitimacy or illegitimacy, right? From the, you know, the Russiagate stuff and et cetera, even though no one seems to deny that he won 2020, you know, fair and square, or 2024 fair and square. But he's still not given the legitimacy thing. But in the rest of the world, or at least not like outside of America and the West, he is absolutely seen as legitimate and as one of the most legitimate, in a certain sense, or most to be taken seriously presidents in a long time. And I feel like his speech in Israel was one of those moments, right? It's like, what U.S. president has gone to Israel and spoken with such gravitas and with such poignancy to the moment that they're coming in, right? But yet in America, it's still like we're not giving him that due. And I think that in a certain sense, he's just sort of given up on that ever happening. He's just like, I'm just going to do things, and the people who see will see, and the people who don't see won't see. But there were still cracks in that coming through, right? Like Hillary Clinton was like, look, you know, honestly, we got to give him credit for this Israel deal thing. Like, that was a big deal.
But that's a tell.
Right.
That's a tell how silent most people were about, let's say, the deal, because this is what you wanted, baby, right? No more dead, no more dead. Like the quote unquote genocide.
Yeah, bring an end to the genocide. Bring an end to the genocide in Gaza. All right, I ended the genocide in Gaza.
That's why I said
cricket. You know,
I said this provocative comment, which is, to the world, we could either be Judas or Jesus. There's nothing between. And like, and again, I think there's a reaction, right, to Trump, which is there's a reaction which is scary for people, right? Because you're seeing what was sort of like for the last 10 years, the second you say my narrative, or you drop narrative, like, you know, anything goes, right? Like, my narrative is this, like and that's why Jordan Peterson is so interesting, because he really saw a lot of this sort of happening or unfolding, and, like, you know, going to Bill 16, like what that meant, right? Like, that goes back to literally and figuratively. So Trump is that reminder. No, literally means literally, and people don't want that, and that's very, very. It's scary because we're really seeing it play out in the world. And there's moments where you're seeing this, like, you had to have, and we could only see this in retrospect. Again, like God tells Moses, you can't see my face, right? You could only see my back. What if Russia wasn't fighting Ukraine? They would have time to help Iran during that. Like, that whole dynamic would be different. And what if we didn't have COVID? And like all these things that like are little adjustments to moving this whole ship. Only later on can we start connecting dots and seeing how these things are unfolding. And you're saying that, like, on the media and the power brokers are not letting it happen. I think
They're not.
There's
They're
this-
not. They can't stop it from happening, but they're sort of stopping it from having the sense of the collective sense of importance that it probably deserves.
But this is part of Trump also winning, though, where everyone's like, no way it's going to happen, which is there's this idea in the Midrash, which is the Messiah is already here. We don't know who he is. He doesn't even know himself who he is. But like, if we knew who he is, it would allow the light to focus on him. And that's why he's really in this shell of unholiness. And when the time is right, he'll be able to sort of sprout. But that shell is really protecting him. What I mean is that the poison you hear in the news, the insanity you hear, that is a lot. Like if the real leader emerged right now, let's say in Israel, or let's say if the TLC, so to speak, had too much light on it, then it would crumble. But instead, there's so much noise happening that it's allowing underneath the radar new things to percolate. And because there's so much noise, it's allowing, like, this might be a stretch, but like a Barry Weiss move taking over of CBS News, that's like under the radar, suddenly boom, because there's switches, things change, the podcast, bam, 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 and that allowed to happen because everyone's focusing on other stuff or doing other noise that's going on. So we could look at it as like something horrible, or we could look at it as no. Because of all this craziness, it allowed podcasts to grow, which allowed Sam, the Unitarian, to have a discussion like he had yesterday and grow a channel. Like that can't happen. Or whether it's Redeemed Zoomer or whether it's Jordan Hall talking to, like, all that thing, that couldn't happen if there was a focus on it. So and let's say Jordan Peterson took a lot of that heat in a certain sense, right? That he was taking on him, but that was allowing so much to grow underneath. And suddenly, like the biblical series, right? Like you were saying, I think back in the day, or many of us feel like, are the Jews or the Christians or like, in the room, can you hear what this guy's talking about? And if that was center stage off the bat, if he started with a biblical series, then it would have been trashed. But it allowed that to happen sort of underneath the surface, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. I really like the Kushner idea of splitting governance over the West Bank. It could be an East and West Germany thing, but then it becomes even more apparent what the limitations of Hamas are.
So he's referring to this idea of splitting it, sort of like the Berlin Wall, right? And then like they'll get to see how it's like, quote unquote, on the West. The problem with that is that model, I would say, is that, again, that's putting a Western frame saying, like, don't you understand? All they want is just like to work and be free. It's not so simple. People need to realize that, like, especially
because East and West Germany was a disagreement over economic philosophy, but they were fundamentally both German. Whereas this is a split between two peoples. And so what are you going to do? Like, you can't just, it's not like, oh, we're going to sacrifice our communist identity and embrace capitalism, which ended up happening. You can't sacrifice your Palestinian, Arab Muslim identity. That's just not going to happen, right?
I think that will happen, actually. That, again, that doesn't mean, I think that results in Arabs living more free than ever in the land of Israel, which includes Arab ministers and like the whole array of things. I think it could be amazing. However, I do think it does require giving up. Again, it's complicated. I could see a version where it means giving up the Palestinian identity and merging back into a larger Arab identity. I do think, though, for that conversation to happen, Israel does have to recognize the concept of the Nakba, which means like we do need to realize that like there's a lot, because of our trauma, there's a lot of trauma you suffer trauma as well. And again, the Bible talks about this. You were a foreigner in Egypt. You are the ones that are supposed to be sensitive to the trauma. So of course, again, it's a feature. You're dealing, when you come back to the land, which is so biblical, you're dealing with the other thing that is hammered on in the 5 books. You have a foreigner in your land. And I would say this, in a certain sense, is the last, I believe, I hope, is the final move. The final move is unity. Can we unify in Israel? Can America unify? Like, can we as people see each other, make space for each other. And if we can, I feel like we can move on to the next stage. And I feel like that is that test right now. We need to see if like, can it actually be done? Really, this is the whole story of Genesis. The fighting between the brothers constantly, right? Cain and Abel, Ishmael, Adam, Esau, like fighting, all the way to Jacob and his, Joseph and his brothers. And then even at the end when he forgives them, right? Jacob dies. The brothers bug out. They're like, oh man, now he's going to kill us again. He tells them, chill out. I love you. It's all good. Only when that happens, that is, correcting Cain and Abel, as in unity is possible. Only then is there a reason to continue with the other books. Because if we didn't get to unity, it would be like, forget it. The idea is that is possible. And ultimately, that's what we need to be doing right now. But again, to what Neil was saying, we have to realize that there's 20 years of indoctrination, heavy, crazy indoctrination. So I don't see even Hamas as evil. I see them as evil possessed. That doesn't mean they don't have to be stopped, but it's not like it's an evil DNA. It just means it needs mass.
We wrestle not against flesh and blood.
I don't know if that happens from a wall. Like, people, there's a crazy story, but people have heard it, but like woman, terrorist, tries to kill Israel, helps her, takes care of her, does surgery for her, does all these stuff, takes care of her in the hospital. She leaves, finally healed, comes back only to be able to do it again. And you're like, no, it's more, it's deeper than that. It's not just like I need a job or I need some money. For the people, in the cities that were massacred, the little kibbutzim that were massacred, for 20 years, you had Gazans Palestinian Gazans coming in from Gaza, working there, sitting at the table, enjoying the meal. They had, and in their clothing, we found maps, who lived in each house, where time did they went to work, if they have a dog, how many kids, how do you get there? So that's a reality that we can't ignore that. That doesn't mean all Arabs. It doesn't even mean all Gazans. It just means we can't be Pollyannish about it. I please God, inshallah, we'll be able to dance together, because like I really truly believe we only move forward together with them. I hope it can be done properly.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I mean, do you tell me, what do you like? Does it cause you attention when I speak about it this way, like about like Israel or about like Judaism, or like, are you like, I wonder as a Christian, like what are you hearing when I'm talking?
Well, so what I'm hearing, my dad and I had a talk recently about eschatology, and I still sometimes scratch my head over how this is all going to fit together. And part of me, you were talking about, the preamble to that verse about spears and plowshares was, the word coming out from Zion or something like that. Mm-hmm. And part of me is like, this is always the weird thing of how a Christian is supposed to understand and relate to Judaism now. Am I supposed to be really happy and hopeful about all these changes in Israel, or is it the setting of the stage of the Antichrist? That's always the question that's going on in the back of the mind of a Christian. Yes, we want Jews to be happy. Yes, we want Jews to flourish. Yes, we want Israel to be in a state of peace. Watch out is sort of the message. And I like the question of, a Jewish temple is, I think, really, really the lightning rod of how do our hopes and dreams reconcile together. Because there is a Jewish longing for a temple, and there is a Christian warning that says that the person who rebuilds that temple will try and make himself God.
So, first of all, thank you for articulating that and sharing that. Not always so simple to do that. And the only way the temple gets built is if we all want to build the temple. And then we'll build it. That's the miracle. The miracle, it goes back to the unity. The miracle is that we want to build it together. And we don't want to build it yet, and that's why it's not being built. And obviously,
there's also a certain building in the way.
But I mentioned that either at this point, let me go back for a second. You're saying I'm speaking to my dad. I'm asking about this, and I'm scratching my head. And I would say, like, we're right now at the period of, like, that's it. We've reached the limit of how we can understand how this is going to unfold. And now we're seeing things are like rapidly happening so fast on multiple levels, a technological level, a political level, a social level. And it's sort of time to buckle your seatbelt in a certain sense, but also loosen your collar, which I think, like, get into positions, but realize it's more complicated than we thought it was going to be. We see who's at the finish line right now, as in, like, with, I'm saying the brothers have come together, Adam, Ishmael, Israel. I would even say even the Eastern religions have their own mix into this, which they're slowly coming together to the oneness behind all things. And I think, Israel has questions, which is like, okay, now that we're here, what does that mean? Right? Like, how do we actually manifest? Christians have, like, what you're saying right now, like, okay, like, Trinity, like, what is it actually, like, I'm trying to understand what this means. And there's this Christian lesson that's growing, and there's a whole question with Christians themselves coming back to orthodoxy, which is who we are. And that's that whole conversation, the language is happening. And clearly we see in the Islam world also this major confusion. So I think that's also part of the feature is we're now in a moment where the lines are more blurred, in that sense, where it's like there's an uncertainty with regards to everyone. And because there's uncertainty with regards to everyone right now, it forces us to look at others people. Paul once said this of, like, different people picking up their flags. It requires us to now sort of, like, look across and be like, wait, how are they doing? How are they doing? Because now it's fair to use them as a barometer and a point of orientation. For the longest time, it's like, these guys are gone on this and that. Now the questions about, like, replacement theology, there's a whole conversation with Pete and Matt C. and Yosef of, like, that whole conversation. I don't look at that as scary. I look at that as blessed, which is like, yeah, we have to ask. If you're saying you're Israel and I'm saying I'm Israel, like, okay, like, what does that mean? But it means that at the very least, as long as it's with love and making space from the other, then we could, like I'm saying, those channels in the Sea of Reeds, we know we're walking towards the mountain of God. And when I tell my Muslim brothers and sisters, for right now, I don't want to knock down any Dome of the Rock. We all just want to play there together. It's like the prophet says, it's a house of prayer for all people. It's not even called the temple anymore. It's called the house of prayer for all peoples. At this moment, let's all pray. When the Messiah comes, when Jesus comes, when the last Mahdi comes. And Maimonides even gives the words for this. Like he says, at the end, like, the truth will reveal itself. Who are we to challenge Hashem, Allah, or God, right? When he comes and he calls the shot, we will all bend the knee and say yes. If it means in the end we all have to put on, like, a kafia, I guess that's the way it went down. But now I'm done quibbling with, like, no, in verse X it means Y, and it doesn't mean a virgin. But, like, if you look at they did that. They did the heavy lifting right now. Now we're at a place where it's okay. The high level of prophecy that Moses got to was knowing that there's a limitation to his knowledge. And when he comes back from the mountain and his face is shining and he puts on the veil, he's allowing the Israelites to experience that as well. You could see me, but there's also a cover. What I experienced above is a little version of what you guys are experiencing right now. You could see me, but you can't fully see me. There's always a limit. If you were hoping that on your interview, on your last podcast, he's going to be like, in verse X, it means Y. And now you're like, oh, it all clicked. And, like, suddenly Jesus pops out of the screen, right? Yeah. Like, now it's time to, I think, like, how do we work together? And again, that's why TLC for me is such, like, a magical space, because I didn't see, and why Jordan Peterson was amazing, because it universalized that language in a certain sense for many, 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 many people. And it allowed everyone to remember there's a common language that we're speaking, the common language that we're talking about. So the confusion is a feature.
The confusion is a feature. One thing that you were talking about earlier that was striking my imagination was, like, in the Gospels, Jesus is strangely coy about whether or not he's the Messiah. And I think that, and this causes Christians to come to all sorts of weird conclusions.
To both to speaking to the Romans and to speaking to the Jews.
Yeah, even as apostles. And obviously at one level, back then, to go around saying you were the Messiah was basically an act of sedition against the Romans. And they knew full well what that meant, and they'd already killed a bunch of them, right? And so you can't go around openly saying that. But what you said, there's always a Messiah at any given time, and that we don't know who he is and he doesn't know who he is, right? And Jesus would often talk about the Son of Man this, the Son of Man that, Son of Man this, Son of Man that. And it's unclear. It's like, why are you talking? Is he, Christians are like, why is he talking in the third person? But I think that if you think about it the way that you were describing, and imagine that there was some sort of similar belief and expectation of humility with respect to that question of who the Messiah is, even if it might be yourself, it makes a lot more sense the way that he was acting. And like one of the few times where he'll admit to being the Messiah is in his trial scenes, like when Pilate says, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he'll say something like, "You have said it," right? Like he can't say it himself. It needs to be said by others about him.
Boy, listen. There's a very controversial or line in the Zoharic in the Kabbalah literature, which is Am Yisrael Kucha Brichu V'Oraita Chadem, which means the nation of Israel, or the people of Israel, the Torah and God are all one. You could understand how for Jews that becomes like a very scary idea suddenly. But even Rabbi Kook or Rabbi Nachman, these are figures. Rabbi Kook is a good example of this, which is the idea of the tzaddik, of the righteous sage. Again, one has to be very careful about this. They're not saying that they're God, but they're saying that if you fully orient yourself properly with the commandments and all the stuff, then you become that revelatory channel from Sinai again. And you are connected to God. And because of that, the people are connected to you are experiencing that. So in that sense,
that's what David Bentley Hart's trying to say, except he's still clinging on to some last vestige of Trinitarianism, I think, and unwilling to go the full 9 yards of his own the own logical conclusion of his train of thought. Right.
But that's why it's potentially, I mean, there's even our sages talk about how, in every tribe, in every house, there's like a little Messiah, and that's a lowercase Messiah, not a capital case Messiah. So like there's a political figure, but Judaism really downplays that and says it's really about the collective. Ultimately, it's about the collective. We are all the people of Israel, which is the Torah, which is God. And that's the note I wrote on your thing, which is there's no void, there's no space void of you, basically, which is like there's a recognition of everything. And again, those are scary ideas. And that's why I wouldn't discuss that with my son right now about does Rabbi Kook think ultimately he's sort of a manifestation of God? Because that's too much to unpack to a child, like what that means, and a Jewish child and a Jew in that context. But the phenomena of Jesus is not like it didn't sprout out of nowhere, right? There's a mythical element to that, which it's very, very strong, which is very different, let's say, potentially from the historical Jesus of, let's say, what happened over there and what that idea means. Then it gets very scary when we take an idea and there's a whole doctrine around that, right? Which is obviously your attention. But I would say when I see you participating and I see those kind of conversations, I don't see that as sacrilege. I see that for heaven's sake. And I see that as a Christian trying to understand this experience that he has right now. And if that means I need to dig deeper and prod and things like that, but I think that ultimately leads to a deeper connection to God. Even that means certain layers are being peeled off, which is scary.
Yeah.
But again,
like Anselman was criticizing me in the comment section, of course, as he always says. but for having a theology that was basically a work in progress. I'm like, well, what kind of theology would you rather have? Would you rather have one that's a work in progress, or would you rather not be progressing and working on it? That doesn't mean that we can't be sure of certain things or something like that. But
that is told explicitly to Moses when in the burning bush. Abraham and the forefathers knew me as El Shaddai. You know me as the Tetragrammaton. There's a progression to these things. And when we pray in the silent prayer, we start with the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Why not just the God of the forefathers? Because we're recognizing each one of them had a different understanding of you. So I'm locking into all theirs, tapping into all theirs. And there's my understanding of you, 2025. These are all stacked upon each other. There's this crazy midrash, the time traveling midrash. God takes Moses on in a time machine to show him all these different sages of all the generations. And he gets to Rabbi Akiva, and he's sitting in the study hall, and he's sitting all the way in the back, as in he's considered like a lowly student. And Rabbi Akiva is talking, and Moses has no idea what's flying, right? There's advanced mathematics as far as he's concerned. And he feels very weakened by this. He's like, I'm Moses, and I have no idea what's happening over here. And then one of the students asks Rabbi Akiva, how do we know this? And Rabbi Akiva says, this is Moses' Torah. We know this from Moses from Sinai. Like, this is our tradition. And then Moses feels better about this because he realizes that this is clearly part of a progressive revelatory experience that's going on. As in, the root is still mine. However, it is already manifested in something else. But as long as they're tethered still to the root, even if I don't understand it, I recognize it as true already at that point because where it's connected to. So, of course, there's a new understanding. So your uncertainty, I wouldn't say, and this is why I think when we talk about the TLC as play, I think there's a deep meaning there too. In the Talmud, they would do sometimes, if rabbis got to this point where they can't take the conversation any further, they would stop, crack some jokes, and then continue. Because humor or play allows us, think about dark humor. It allows us to
escape out of a frame. Yeah,
exactly. And because of that, we could break through to this new idea. So you saying I'm in this middle of this conversation, and even jokingly talking to in your podcast, the sense of of how it's relaxed, even though you're talking about the most fundamental things, I think that allows you to play with it, and the freedom to do that. That is allowing you to move. I think the Torah says, turn it around and turn it again. Keep on digging into it and conversing it and looking at these lines and learning new insights from these lines. If we stop doing that, then Sinai is dead, or Sinai is stagnant. And we've lost revelation 2,400 years ago. In order to keep this vessel prepared to accept revelation again, we must keep on participating in the word of the living God. And so getting to new insights or by the way, which is different than doctrine or practice, right? There's how I'm acting, right? And I understand that there's protocols to certain things. Even if I understand that, let's say, this commandment or this thing is no longer relevant, there's different questions of how I would interpret that or how I have to act. But definitely, as far as your theology or what you're thinking about, I think people need to constantly be not challenging, but honestly, I mean, that's the name of Israel, right? Challenging and wrestling with God. So why would that be problematic? I'm asking.
No, I got to go. I've got a meeting in basically 0 minutes. Although I will say, unnamed Christian apologist X, who I will not name, in my private correspondence one time told me, Sam, I'm never going to change my mind on this. And I was just floored. I was just I found that so offensive to the pursuit of truth that I almost couldn't believe they said that.
Opposite of what Maimonides starts his whole work with, which says, accept the truth from he who said it, which is working off of Aristotle, but basically saying truth is truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I appreciate the conversation, Sam. Hopefully,
I appreciate your time, Hezi. I always enjoy talking with you.
Middle East. We'll talk, dude. Take care.
Right. God bless.
Such a nice conversation with Sam. What a rock star. What did I miss over here? Okay, Neil, we saw. Neil, I hope you're doing well as well. Eric here. Yawn God, I think the moral is that when you try this, you end up failing. You could expand on it. Yeah, God, I'm not exactly sure what you meant by that. I think the moral, you try this. Try this, meaning what? I love when Chazit shares this midrash. Hey, Donnie, I hope you're doing well. Really, you should be working right now. Actually, no, don't you start working at 12. You're starting to work in half an hour from now. All right, I'm on for a few more minutes and then I'm done, those. If anyone's joining right now, I'm here for a little longer, and I can discuss different things if they like Judaism, Israel, politics, or anything you really want to talk about right now. I'm still doing a little work. By the way, I just checked it up. Saying I said to Sam, I asked him about we were talking about the population, how 400,000 soldiers in Israel were fighting, which is 5.2% of the population going into battle, which I was talking about is crazy. And in Ukraine, it's 2.5%. So it's double the amount in Ukraine and like, I don't know, triple other wars. So again, I think there's something very special about that. Again, not that there's war, of course, but that the sense of purpose and meaning that is displayed. Neil, I hope you're doing well. I liked your return to the Petersonian angle. I think that's what your video was about in the TLC. All right, I'm done with work. I bid you adieu to anyone's watching. Take care. Peace and love.